calling matter of Sean, Dockray and Carmel Downs for hearing.
Can you do this in Chrome?
Chrome. I think I can.
So I think I have a stenographer here. This will do it. If you just do the sounds of the room. Thank you. Downstairs in the lobby of this federal courthouse is a stenographer's memorial, also on this floor, which you can see on Exhibit E1. If you don't have one, you can sort of share. It says, Stepib og tippers febelfor, tikid kieted tuta febelfor, if all those stepib og tippers who sir pub hurls to kipau taubs pu taub 1987 skip 2045. So this is written in stenotype and translated into English, into written English. It's dedicated to the memory of all those stenographers who have been lost to computation between 1987 and 2045. So this memorial is in the tradition of workers' memorials. E2 and E3, the Italian gold miners memorial on E2, or the Stockton Colliery disaster memorial of E3, which most often memorialize a disastrous event. The question is how to memorialize a slow motion disaster, one that's still unfolding. And without going into the whole history of stenography, my stenography is not keeping up, and its evolution of various shorthand systems into this, such as E4, or into the stenotype machine and the keyboard layout of Exhibit E6. Stenotype machine developed in 1913 with 22 keys only and no number bar. Or going into the mechanical systems of writing, writing sound like the phonotogram, Exhibit E5. I want to draw your attention instead to Exhibits E6 and E7. When science and industry become interested in the automatic transcription of machine shorthand. And IBM in 1960, in E7, extended this research of automatically converting stenotype back into human readable language. Intriguingly, the author of that paper, E.J. Galley, wrote, "There are other potential applications." And one such application driving the research was a partnership with the CIA, who declared, as you can see in E8, since 1952, we've urged the development of machine translation capability, particularly for the translating scientific Russian to English. And like so many technologies which were developed within a military and intelligence context, computational stenography and the automatic translation of language was rolled into commercial use. Exhibit E10 on page 2 looks at the proposed use of computer to translate stenotype notes into their English equivalent as a means of solving the problem of the congestion and delay in the criminal court system attributable to backlogs and transcript production. So there's two things to note. One is the increase in prosecution and law enforcement activity, and stenographers seen as an impediment to that. And two, the increase in pressure and stress on stenographers and the deterioration of working conditions. So back to the memorial. In 1987, Exhibit E11 was the first stenograph machine to encode machine notes in computer language on a floppy disk, the profession's first true DOS-based machine. 2045, just to take issue with Mr. Gray earlier, will be the date of singularity. Since 1987, the introduction of the computerized stenograph machine, incarceration rates in the United States has doubled. So while automatic translation of speech and writing to writing has been the focus of these technologies, now companies like Google are addressing the more general problem of the automatic translation of sound to writing. E12 is Google's project of currently developing an audio ontology and using your YouTube videos to train their AI to recognize these sounds. These sounds being alarms, fires, noise, generic impact sounds. And one such application of this ontology is in surveillance systems. Exhibit E13, the Moreton Bay City Council installing audio into their surveillance cameras in order to target creepy characters with audio and video recording. And what a technology like this allows is both monitoring outside the camera image. Now that's not. Because the scope of the recorder is better than the scope of the, oops. There, we're back. Oh boy. And also the potential delegation of policing to the algorithm. And so if I've implied that stenographers might disappear because of speech-to-text capabilities, and these developments because of companies like Google, it's also because of a more generalized stenography within the overall environment that might circumvent the space of the courtroom entirely. In Exhibit E14 and E15, we see that there is a precedent for the crime-fighting stenographer in the cultural imagination, sort of moral stenographer, with movies like or films like Fraud at Hope Mine and The Real Estate Fraud, both following a similar plot line, where a stenographer doing their job overhears or transcribes the plot for a crime, and then as a moral conscience sort of requires that they intervene and they come in to save the day. But on the other hand, Brunhilde Pomsel, Exhibit E17, said, "I knew nothing of the Holocaust, despite the fact that she was working as the stenographer of Joseph Goebbels, E16. How is this possible? Did she fail to actually listen to what she was hearing? Did the words just pass through her body as if she were a machine?" In an E18, a few years ago, Daniel Kachansky, a stenographer from New York, turned his body off, just typing "I hate my job" over and over and over into the court record, rather than a transcription of the proceedings. And Diane Reedy, the congressional stenographer, got up from her steno machine a few years ago during a debate for the vote on the debt limit, stood at the microphone and shouted, "The Constitution would not have been written by Freemasons. They go against God. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve two masters." She was fired. But in E20, she explained in a YouTube video that those weren't her words at all, but rather that God was speaking through her. And citing the Bible says, "For prophecy had never had its origin in the will of man." So naturally, God chose the stenographer. Diane Reedy follows a long line of stenographers who transcribe messages from the spirit world. E22, for example, at seances. E23, acting as a surrogate author, like Frederick Oliver, E26. Or writing screenplays, E25, Mae West. But as much as a stenographer behaves like a machine or conduit, are they not affected by the stories that they hear, that they write, the crimes that they transcribe? In the same way that E27 and E28, online journalists or content moderators, are said to be suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder by exposure. And this is admittedly speculative. Carmel, are you ever affected by these things?
Should I type it or say it? Sometimes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So things like 9/11
Mm-hmm.
and the 10th anniversary of 9/11. I cried all day while I was captioning that. So
Yeah.
we had a matter with 3 children who were killed in Dubai in a fire, and I had to caption the funeral, and I cried all through that one as well. So
As you worked, yes. So are stenographers machines or conduits? Or are they moral agents? Or PTSD victims or grouchy workers or prophets? In J.H. Rosny the Elder's Another World, the stenographer is a purple-skinned, opaque-eyed, melancholic pariah living in Holland who trained as a stenographer precisely because he already was something of a computer. His doctor hypothesized that the subtlety of my hearing corresponded with the speed of my speech, graduated experiments on more and more fugitive sounds, which I was able to repeat back with ease, the sound of 10 or 15 people speaking at the same time, each of which I was able to understand perfectly well. So, but do hearing and speed correspond to listening and a useful politics? They might. Depends on the context and on the larger machine that they're a part of. In 1924, Leon Trotsky wrote a letter called On Stenography, where he writes, looking back on these 7 years of revolution since 1917, I'm completely unable to imagine how it would have been possible to get through them without the constant help of stenographers. Compared to the traditional individualist forms of writing, he says, when you write by yourself, you construct your sentences better and more accurately. But, on the other hand, your attention gets too taken up with the details of expression and the very process of writing, and you easily lose sight of the overall picture. And then he continues, at first, I experienced a certain embarrassment when writing with a stenographer. Exhibit E33, page 2. You can't slack off. Your coworker is waiting. It's like when two people are sawing wood with a handsaw, they have to move rhythmically. And so in his conclusion, he makes a statement that all of us might pose to ourselves as a question at the moment today, which is, he says, it can be said that the cultural growth of our society will be measured by the place that stenography has within it.